Oops, sorry. Did not know I was live already. Okay, this is a ZvZ, well, another ZvZ between Cinnamon and OboeMan. This is going to be on Metalopolis. Cinnamon is spawning in the top as the red Zerg, and OboeMan is spawning in the bottom as the blue Zerg. Both players starting out pretty mannered, so that's good. So hopefully we don't see any more cheese. I mean, I'm really surprised I've cast several ZvZs already, which is kind of strange, but like I said, most of these are cold casts, at least up to this point. I have a few more that I've watched, but after this they're mostly cold casts because I made it known that I only wanted one replay from every player so that I wouldn't have to watch them, because I don't really like to watch games and then have to cast them because I know everything that's about to happen, so I can't really be surprised legitimately, and then if I try to be surprised at something that I'm not surprised at, I just sound stupid. Plus, I don't show surprise that well in general, so yeah, I need to be as surprised as possible to be surprised. That makes sense. OboeMan throwing down a pretty early gas, so he's probably going to be going for some speedlings or some banelings as soon as his spawning pool dash baneling nest comes up. Cinnamon looking to go for a fast expand, just needs about 20 more minerals, so after that he will set up his expansion. So we've seen this in pretty much every ZvZ we've watched. One person has gone hatch first while the other has gone pool first. This time though, OboeMan seems to be gearing up for a little bit more aggressive of a 14 pull than the other two did. They seem to be getting that pull up just to defend. And like we saw last time, November, even though he put up his pull early, he still had that economic lead because he sort of faked pressure with those lings, and because the person 15 hatching saw that he had his spawning pool up so early, he overreacted, and as soon as his spawning pool came up, he used all of his larvae on Zerglings instead of drones. So November was able to drone up, while Frank just had a ton of useless, slow Zerglings, giving November sort of a lead early that propelled him into the mid-game with a pretty good economic lead and won him the game eventually. So we're going to see how this one plays out. I wouldn't imagine, I wouldn't be that surprised to see this game play out much differently than the last one, because one player going Roach and the other player going Mutalisk and forcing it into a sort of a base race scenario is very, very common in ZvZ, especially in this time of the metagame. What you'll see a lot is about 20 Roaches moving in on Blue's base, while Blue has 10 Mutalisks frantically trying to either kill off the Roaches that are destroying his base, or just trying to kill off Red's base while Red is killing off Blue's base. Usually the person with the Mutalisks has an advantage because, you know, Mutalisks can attack Roaches and Roaches can't. But yeah, so that's pretty standard. We're gonna have a little bit of skirmishes down here. Not too much that OboeMan can do, just because Cinnamon has these 4 lings that are going to block and this spine crawler. Spine crawlers don't do the additional damage versus lings, but I mean they're still pretty good against lings as long as they don't get surrounded. Spine crawlers, they have a pretty high DPS rate, and they're also pretty I guess not, I shouldn't say pretty healthy. They have 2 armor, so every hit that a Zergling does is only going to be 3 damage. So even if the Zerglings getting us around can be very good against spine crawlers, but if they don't get us around, the Zerglings are just so weak that they get picked apart very easily, and isn't able to block them from getting inside, but he does manage to whittle them down enough that he has 3 lings while Cinnamon has 4. So at this point it's just going to be some minor irritations until Cinnamon's metabolic boost finishes, and then he's going to be able to clean up these Zerglings. The Zerglings doing nothing except for really taxing Cinnamon's APM and forcing him to put APM where he doesn't really want to put his APM. So going down to OboeMan's base, we see 2 banelings up. This is going to defend OboeMan from pretty much any sort of ling pressure OboeMan should have some Zerglings of his own so that Cinnamon might be able to abuse this by running in one Zergling and letting the auto attack on the Banelings kill a Zergling, which is not cost effective, which is a lot of times what you'll see in the micro battles. Who can pick off the most Banelings with one drone, or with one Zergling, my apologies. And it really just comes down to that Ling Bling micro. One big Baneling hit can end a ZvZ game, and that's why a lot of players dislike ZvZ so much, is because you can have a very clear, distinct advantage, and then suddenly it be completely gone just because you had one minor misclick that let your entire army die. So we'll see if any misclicks like that occur. It looks like OboeMan going... That's a pretty smart thing to do. The only problem with what he was doing was he did it so immediately after that OboeMan knew that he was back there. A lot of times what I have done in the past and what I've seen some other players do is they'll bring them down here and then they'll go up to this corner or this corner and morph them, and then hopefully the other player doesn't have Banelings down here, so then they come back down and then they swing around with their Banelings and get a big hit on the mineral line. As I said in earlier casts, Banelings are very, very good against mineral lines, especially oversaturated ones, or even just saturated ones like this. 2 Banelings in this mineral line, I would say, would probably get 8 to 10 drones in this mineral line, maybe a little bit more. It looks to be a bit oversaturated. Let's check the units. No, it doesn't look like there should be much oversaturation unless there is bad worker spread, and it doesn't look like it's that bad. Cinnamon does keep spawning out new units, and OboeMan is able to force one of the Banelings to get an attack off, which is a pretty good victory for OboeMan. Any Baneling that you can pick off with a single Zergling is pretty big in this matchup, but the later we get into the game, the less it matters. I would say at this stage in the game, it doesn't matter as much as it would have about a minute or two ago. But it's still a small victory, and the small victories can add up and make a big difference. Checking the units lost, we see that Cinnamon has lost more. And he's also at a worker disadvantage. He's also going to be at an expansion timing disadvantage. So Cinnamon at a slight disadvantage. He has a slight supply lead, but that doesn't really matter all that much just because his army is comprised mostly of roaches, and roaches take up a lot of supply. 2 for a 75-25 unit is actually quite a bit of supply, but it's kind of necessary because 4 roaches to be 1 supply that was OP. I believe that was the beta roach. The beta roaches were ridiculous. They only had 3 range, but yeah, they were ridiculous. But OboeMan, not content with having a supply deficit, so he's getting roaches of his own. Getting up some static for his 3rd base, which is a really good idea, but the one thing that he's not doing that I don't really like is this base is oversaturated. I can tell because the workers, they go to mine, and you can see them moving around to other mineral patches, which is what happens on an oversaturated mineral patch. So he needs to bring some of these and put them over here because you want to mine out the bases furthest from you as fast as possible because they're the most vulnerable. So OboeMan just needs to do some worker spreading. It will increase his harvesting, I think, probably by a lot. And his main is oversaturated. This could be saturated a little bit more, and this could be saturated a lot more. And it looks like OboeMan is going to find a good timing to hit. If we check the army, he is way ahead in the army. And Cinnamon has done several huge waves of drones and is at a pretty big worker lead. So, ooh, a decent Baneling hit right there on those roaches. I was saying in an earlier game that Sheth is a pro player who actually likes to use Banelings against roaches just because roaches are... They tend to group together very tightly, and Zerg players are not used to needing to split up roaches, so very rarely will they attempt to do any roach splits. And you will see just a lot of splash damage happening. And while you don't see that much damage going down, you get a lot of actual damage. So that one Baneling probably dealt about 120 to maybe even... He dealt a lot of damage. That's what he did. Because he hit a lot of roaches with that splash. So Cinnamon deciding to push out, which is not a good idea. He really needs to back out. There's no way that his roaches will beat that number of roaches. Yeah, 29 versus 32, plus OboeMan has the instant reinforcements, and all of these roaches are just now coming in. So Cinnamon wisely backs out. Checking the production. Cinnamon is getting the burrow tech. I don't think either one of them... Actually, both of them do now have roach speed. I guess I missed that. So both of them on their speedy little roach legs. Cinnamon just kind of being pesky in general, making sure that OboeMan knows that he's in the game, that he exists, and that he is going to keep poking and prodding wherever he can. But he actually decides to back up and let that pressure off. I really liked what Cinnamon was doing there, just kind of keeping the pressure off, but I really like what OboeMan is doing. Just Baneling drops on a ball of roaches can be devastating. It's another thing that I have seen Sheth do. I'm sorry that I talk about Sheth so much. He's one of my favorite players. But he will get Overlords and he will just drop Banelings on the roaches because roaches can't shoot air, so why not? So you see the roaches moving out, checking the Xel'Naga. I don't believe that Cinnamon had that Xel'Naga at any time. So all that he sees is a bunch of Overlords moving across the map. But just because there's so many, that should tell him that there is something bad inside those Overlords. Cinnamon is going to be forced to cancel, and OboeMan decides not to pick off that drone. That drone is a pretty lucky drone. I guess OboeMan deciding not to drop. I guess just faking a little bit of pressure there. Denying that fourth is going to slow him down a little bit. Cinnamon has a single Infestor. Should probably get some more because Infestors are good. I mean, there's no way around that. Cinnamon getting down a second infestation pit. Oh my gosh, I missed a pretty huge battle up here. It looks like some burrowed roaches made it inside the main of... Or maybe not even burrowed roaches. It looks like the roaches, yeah, they just got inside the base normally, but got shut down pretty quickly. And here comes Baneling drops, doing huge damage to those roaches, just like I said. Not even mad. Well done. That was a very, very strong play by OboeMan, but Cinnamon is going to clean this up. It looks, they both have the same upgrades. Cinnamon was really able to hold that off because he was able to reinforce faster. But OboeMan should be... Oh, he has lost slightly more resources, but a lot of those could have been lost because of the forces up here. And what Cinnamon's strength was, all of his forces were together at once, where OboeMan's were not. And his roaches simply did not have... There just weren't enough roaches to deal the damage that he needed to after those Baneling hits. And what I think actually happened, the roaches probably didn't sneak up there. They were probably just dropped in, which is very strange. I don't think I've ever really watched a game where roach drops are used. But Cinnamon is getting some Hydralisks, and Hydralisks are very bad against Banelings, but he is going to pick off every one of these Overlords. Manages to drop some of the roaches directly to their deaths. I'm not sure if these actually got hits off or these roaches are just still recovering from a previous engagement. OboeMan is coming down here to deny the fourth again. Cinnamon can't see that OboeMan is getting up his own fourth, and OboeMan is just being pesky in general. He did lose a lot of resources on that failed drop, and is now at an almost 50 supply deficit. So OboeMan not doing all that well, despite having some impressive sort of guerrilla tactics with that dropping, being very aggressive with those drops, keeping Cinnamon on his feet. But as you can see, Cinnamon is starting to kind of slip in the macro, but that really just means that he's sort of getting close to maxing out and isn't sure what he wants to spend his money on. So right now that's not much of a problem. 23 roaches will bring the supply up a lot. I don't really think OboeMan wants to engage here. He does not have the number of roaches that Cinnamon does, and I mean, Cinnamon is just showing that Luckily for OboeMan, though, he has all of these infestors, which probably will make it out alive, but all of these roaches just so close to death. Should burrow them just so that he can recover. Instead presses the attack on. I really don't like that move by Cinnamon. I think in his mind he saw that he had a larger number of roaches and that he could beat them, but when most of your roaches are near death, it's absolutely no help to you to keep pressing that attack. If he had simply burrowed and let them regenerate, it would have been a hugely different outcome, I believe. I don't think any of these have enough fungal to, you know, reveal the burrowed units. I believe fungal growth reveals cloaked and burrowed units. So Cinnamon picking off a little infestor there. But it looks like OboeMan is going to get a huge surround, which is bad news for Cinnamon. He knows that he needs to back out of there. OboeMan burrowing those infestors, gonna get his roaches out of there. So pretty good engagement angles from OboeMan. I think one thing that is sort of hurting Cinnamon is his lack of Vespene income. These are not mining Vespene that much at all. Neither are these. And that's due to those constant drops. At this level of play, which I believe is maybe platinum to diamond, those drops can really throw you off balance because you're trying to do your army micro, you're trying to attack, so you're not at your base that much, and you don't notice things like these where you only have one worker there, and then I'm distracted by your lack of workers working on the Vespene geysers, and I miss huge engagements like this. OboeMan has... Cinnamon just taps out right there. I think he realized that because of his poor worker control at home, he didn't... that really lost him the game. So all of these drops that were happening that shut down this geyser, that messed up his worker micro here, that messed up his worker micro here, OboeMan was able to win just because Cinnamon ran out of Vespene gas. So he would not have been able to reinforce this army in any way except for with Zerglings, and this army was going to go down very shortly. He had enough fungal on this one, so he might have been able to shut down one of the waves of Zerglings. And OboeMan was actually dropping in up here, it looks like, or either burrowed in and crawled in, but either way, very well played by OboeMan, especially with that micro, the drops and such, even though Cinnamon did have slightly better macro. I wouldn't say significantly better, just because he was never able to get that fourth up. He wasn't very good with dealing with these bases. I mean, you can see this base was forced to cancel again. So, solid play by both players. And with that, I'm going to cut out, and I will be back with another game. Hopefully not another ZvZ, because I've done 3 in a row now.